Right now, you know exactly what time it is. You could glance at your wrist, your phone, the corner of your screen, and a number would tell you precisely where you are in the day. You probably checked it in the last few minutes without even deciding to. But for almost all of human history, that number did not exist. There was no clock to look at. There was no agreed minute. When someone asked what time it was, the honest answer was to look at the sky. Think about what that actually means. For thousands of years, your ancestors lived without a single shared exact measure of time. And here is the part that is hard to believe. They were not confused. They were not constantly late. They organized farming, religion, trade, and entire empires around a sense of time that had almost nothing to do with the one you carry in your pocket. So how did they do it? For most of human history, the answer was the sun. Not a clock measuring the sun itself. When it rose, the day began. When it was directly overhead, that was noon, the middle. When it set, the day was done. This sounds simple, but it hides something strange. The length of an hour was not fixed. The ancient Egyptians, as early as 1500 BC, divided daylight into 12 parts, and the night into 12 parts. That is where our 24-hour day comes from. But because daylight is longer in summer and shorter in winter, those daytime hours stretched and shrank with the seasons. A summer hour was genuinely longer than a winter hour. For most people across history, an hour was not a fixed amount of time. It was a fraction of however much daylight there happened to be. Think about how different that is from your life. Your hour is always 60 minutes, in June and in December, at the equator, and in Norway. Their hour breathed with the seasons. To track the sun more precisely, civilizations built shadow clocks. The sundial is far older than you might guess. The oldest known example, found in Egypt's Valley of the Kings, dates to around 1500 BC, and it is essentially a flat stone marked with lines that a shadow crosses as the sun moves. The Greeks and Romans refined them obsessively. By the 1st century, the Roman writer Vitruvius described more than a dozen different sundial designs. But here is what is fascinating. A sundial is useless when the sun is gone. At night, on a cloudy day, indoors, the shadow vanishes, and so does your sense of time. Your ancestors needed something that did not depend on the sky, so they turned to flowing things. The water clock, or clepsydra, let water drip at a steady rate from one vessel to another, and you read the time by how much had drained. The Egyptians used them by 1400 BC. In Athens, water clocks timed speeches in court so no lawyer could talk too long. Think about that. The first deadlines in human history were measured in dripping water. And then there was fire. In China, people burned incense sticks made to smoulder at a known rate, sometimes with threads tied across them, holding small weights, so that as the fire reached each thread, the weight dropped into a metal tray and rang out. A clock you could hear in the dark. King Alfred the Great of England in the 9th century is said to have used marked candles that burned down through the hours. But that is only half the story, because for the vast majority of people, on the vast majority of days, none of this mattered. Most humans who have ever lived were farmers, and farmers did not need to know that it was 20 past 3. They needed to know that it was time to plant, time to harvest, time to move the animals. Their clock was not the hour, it was the year, and the instrument they read was the sky itself. Across completely separate cultures, with no contact between them, people watched for the same thing, the rising of certain stars. In ancient Egypt, the entire calendar was anchored to a single star. The star Sirius, the brightest in the night sky, disappeared from view for about 70 days each year. When it reappeared on the eastern horizon just before sunrise, that event, called the Heliacal Rising, signalled that the Nile was about to flood. The whole agricultural year, the survival of a civilization, was tied to the morning a star came back. And here is what is genuinely strange. On the other side of the planet, people did the same thing. The Maori of New Zealand marked their new year by the reappearance of the star cluster Matariki, what you might know as the Pleiades. Ancient Greek farmers were told by the poet Hesiod, around 700 BC, to harvest when the Pleiades rose and to plough when they set. 3 cultures, 3 continents, no contact, all reading time from the same handful of stars. Think about what that tells you. The night sky was the first calendar, and it was a calendar everyone could read. But the deepest difference is not the tools. It is what time felt like. Your time is a line. It runs forward from a fixed past into an open future, measured in units that never change. For most of human history, time was not a line. It was a circle. The sun rose and set and rose again. The moon filled and emptied. The same stars returned in the same season, year after year, for a lifetime. Time was not something running out. It was something coming around. And honestly, what comes next is even stranger. The clock you rely on did not arrive to help you. The first mechanical clocks appeared in European monasteries in the late 13th century, and they were not built for farmers or merchants. They were built for monks to call them to prayer at the correct hours of the night and day. The historian David Landis at Harvard argued that the monastery, with its strict schedule of devotion, was the birthplace of the disciplined, time-bound modern world. For a long time, those clocks had no minute hand. People simply did not need one. The minute hand only became common in the 17th century, after the pendulum clock, designed by Christian Huygens in 1656, made clocks accurate enough for the minute to mean anything at all. The second hand came later still. Your ancestors did not lose minutes and seconds. They simply never had them, because nothing in a human life had ever needed to be measured that finely. And then something changed everything, and it was not the clock. It was the train. Until the 19th century, every town kept its own time, set by its own local noon, when the sun stood highest over that exact spot. Noon in one city was a few minutes off from noon in the next. It did not matter, because no one could travel fast enough to notice. But railways could. A train timetable cannot work if every station keeps a different time. So in 1847, British railway companies adopted a single standard, Greenwich Mean Time, across the whole network. The clock on the wall stopped agreeing with the sun outside, and for the first time in human history, the time you lived by came not from the sky, but from a decision. So tonight, when you check the time before bed, notice what you are really doing. You are reading a number that no farmer, no pharaoh, no monk for almost all of history would have recognized. They looked up. They watched a star clear the horizon, a shadow cross a stone, a candle burn low, and they knew where they stood in the great turning circle of the day and the year. You look down at a glowing line of digits that agrees with millions of strangers and disagrees with the sun above your head. The time is no longer something you read from the world. It is something the world agreed to tell you. And the next time you feel like you are running out of it, remember that for almost everyone who ever lived, time was not a thing that ran out. It was a thing that came back around.